You know, they say faith can move mountains. But what happens when that faith is so strong it actually, well, blinds you? That's the huge question at the heart of the classic story we're diving into today, A Letter to God. It seems like a simple tale about a farmer, but trust me, it packs a real punch with some big ideas about humanity, kindness, and a truly unforgettable ironic twist.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with our farmer and his simple hope. Then we'll see how it all goes wrong with the big storm. After that, we'll get into the main event, a letter born from pure faith, the surprising answer it gets, and then we get to that famous ironic twist at the very end.
Okay, first up, a farmer's simple hope. Let's get to know our main character, Lencho, and really understand his world and what he's all about.
So I want you to picture this. A single house, the only one in the entire valley, sitting right on top of a low hill. This is where we meet Lencho. From his home, he can see everything that matters to him in the world. His field of ripe corn, dotted with flowers, just waiting for the harvest. He knows this land like the back of his hand, and he knows it is so close to being perfect. It just needs one little thing.
And that brings us right to our first big question from the text. What was that one thing he hoped for? Staring out at that promising field, what was his simple wish?
Rain. It was that simple. All he wanted was a good downpour. He's so sure it's coming, he even tells his wife, now we're really going to get some water. See, for Lencho, this rain wasn't just about getting the ground wet. It was the key to a good harvest, the key to feeding his family for the entire year. It was everything.
And this line from the story, it's perfect. It tells you everything about his mindset. He literally says the raindrops are like new coins. Think about that for a second. He doesn't just see water, he sees money falling from the sky. The big drops are worth 10 cents, the little ones 5. It shows you exactly how directly tied his survival was to that rain. It was his paycheck. But you know how stories go, this moment of pure joy and hope, well, it doesn't last. In fact, it's about to turn into a complete and utter disaster. Let's get into what happens next.
So just as he's out there enjoying the rain on his skin, everything changes. A strong wind kicks up, and suddenly, it's not rain anymore. It's hail, massive hailstones, and the story even calls them new silver coins, which is just a brutal piece of irony, right? Because these coins weren't bringing wealth, they were bringing destruction. And this wasn't some brief little storm, it went on for a solid hour.
And the result? Absolute devastation. The corn was completely destroyed. The flowers were gone. Not a single leaf was left on the trees. The whole field, once so green and promising, now looked like it had been covered in salt. It was a total wipeout. Lencho himself says that even a plague of locusts would have left more behind. So just imagine that. Your entire year's work, your family's food, gone in an hour. How would you feel? What on earth was going through Lencho's head when that hail finally stopped falling?
Yeah, he was completely crushed. The book says his soul was filled with sadness. And why wouldn't it be? He's looking at a future where his family might actually go hungry this year. All of that work amounted to absolutely nothing.
But this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. Because out of this total despair, Lencho finds one single hope, and it leads him to do something, well, pretty unconventional.
See, despite everything he just lost, there was one thing the storm couldn't take away from Lencho, his faith. It was a simple, powerful, unquestioning faith. He truly believed that God sees everything, even what's deep inside your conscience, and that God would not just let his family starve. In that lonely house, that was the one and only hope they had left.
So what does this powerful faith lead him to do? Something pretty wild. The next Sunday, he sits down and writes a letter. Not to a family member, not to a bank, he writes a letter directly to God. He lays it all out, the hailstorm, the ruined crops, and asks for 100 pesos so he can plant his field again and feed his family. Then he puts it in an envelope and addresses it simply to God. Okay, so this letter actually makes it to the post office. Can you just imagine the postman's face? He's going through the mail, finds this letter, sees the address, and just starts laughing out loud. He's never seen anything like it in his entire career. Of course, he takes it straight to his boss, the postmaster.
Now this is a really key moment in the story. The postmaster's reaction, well, it's not what you might expect. His laughter stops, and something else takes over. And this is where we get our very unexpected answer. So the postmaster starts laughing too, but then he gets serious. He's actually impressed. He's blown away by the power of this man's faith. He says, "What faith? I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter." And right there, he decides he cannot let that faith be broken. So he comes up with this amazing plan. He decides he's going to answer the letter himself. He pitches in part of his own salary. He asks his employees for money. He gets his friends to chip in, all for this act of charity. He can't get the full 100 pesos, but he gathers what he can, a little over half, puts it in an envelope for Lencho, and signs it with just one single word: God.
What an incredible act of kindness, right? But this good deed is exactly what sets up the story's famous and kind of painful ironic twist. Let's see how this all plays out.
All right, so the next Sunday, Lencho shows up at the post office, calm as can be, to ask if there's a letter for him. The postman hands it over. Meanwhile, the postmaster is watching from his office, probably feeling pretty good about the whole thing. So here's the big question. When Lencho gets this letter with money inside, is he surprised?
The answer is not even a little bit. He shows not the slightest surprise. Why? Because in his mind, of course, God answered him. His confidence was so total, so absolute, that getting a letter back from God was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't a miracle, it was just what was supposed to happen. But then, his mood changes. He opens the envelope, he counts the cash, and there are only 70 pesos, not the 100 he asked for.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. He's not disappointed. He's not confused. He becomes angry. But why? He just got 70 pesos seemingly out of thin air. What could possibly make him angry?
Well, here's his logic, and it's kind of flawless in its own way. He thinks God couldn't have made a mistake counting the money, and God definitely wouldn't have denied my request and sent less. So if God sent the full 100 pesos, but only 70 arrived, then something must have happened to the other 30 along the way.
And this, my friends, is a perfect textbook case of irony. You know, when the outcome is the exact opposite of what you'd expect. We know the truth. We know the postmaster and his friends are the heroes here. But Lencho, he has absolutely no idea.
And here it is, the final, brutal twist. Lencho marches right up to the window, asks for paper and ink, and writes a second letter. In it he says, "God, of the money that I asked for, only 70 pesos reached me. Send me the rest. But," he adds, and this is the kicker, "don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks."
So, when you really break it down, there are two big conflicts going on in this story. The first one is obvious. It's human versus nature. Lencho against that devastating hailstorm. But the second one, the one that really makes you think, is human versus human. It's the conflict that comes from Lencho's blind faith, which leads him to completely mistrust the very people who showed him incredible kindness.
It's just incredible when you think about it. Lencho's faith was so powerful it inspired complete strangers to perform a small miracle for him. And yet, that exact same faith made him completely blind to their goodness. And that's the real question the story leaves you chewing on. Sure, faith can move mountains, but maybe the bigger question is, what or who should we really be putting our faith